Oh, okay. Okay, perfect. Wonderful. All right. Aha, if I scroll down, I can see everything. Thank y'all. Okay, so um, here's me. Okay, so my name is Casey Shivers, and um, I have a private practice where I work with clients one on one, and I work with them in a way that I've kind of earned the title health detective. And what that means is I'm using some integrative nutrition and lifestyle coaching techniques. And I think that word integrative is used really often. So whenever I'm using that word integrative, I mean it in a way that I'm typically running lab work with people. And whenever I'm running lab work, what I like to do is kind of spend some time trying to figure out what the underlying physiological root cause is of some of these symptoms that they could be experiencing. These could be symptoms like digestive problems, or they could be chronic fatigue, or they could be hormone imbalances. And what I'm trying to do is kind of not necessarily just get rid of the symptom, but also kind of figure out what the underlying root cause is. And along the way, I like to integrate those methods with figuring out what is the psychological root cause of some of the physiological markers. So that's kind of where I'm coming from whenever I say integrative. I also work at in contract with a couple different addiction recovery facilities, and there my work is mostly centered around doing body image coaching, and I do workshops around kind of our relationship with food, which I feel like is a pretty important one, which I'm going to get into a little bit today. So, you are in the right place if you are looking for my free class where we're talking about the difference between the medical and the holistic approaches to wellness, and how we can combine those methods in order to best improve your health, how your psychology affects your physiology, and really kind of vice versa, and how to listen to those messages that we might be getting from our bodies. I think a lot of times we hear that the term listen to your bodies quite often, and it's not always something that we can do really well. So I want to kind of dive a little bit deeper into that. And there's a lot of mind shift things here that I'm going to go over today. So that kind of gives you an overline. And first, I want to thank you for taking the time to be here in the first place. And I want to apologize in the first place as well, because what I'm trying to do with this seminar is combine an 8-week program into 1 hour. So there's a lot of content that I'm going to go over, and I'm super excited about it. And when I'm excited about things, sometimes I talk a little bit fast. So if you type slow down in the question bar, I will try to slow down a little bit more, but it's because I love what it is that I'm doing. So I'd like to start with this quote: "What got you here won't get you there." And I start with that because I've been in the health industry for a very long time. I've been in the health industry for over 9 years. It's been in a lot of different ways. I've been in hospitals, I've been in physical therapy clinics, I've been in addiction recovery facilities, like I mentioned, I've been in commercial weight loss uh, facilities, and I have my own private practice. And I've seen a lot change with the way that I've approached wellness. And there's some things that I like about the health industry, and there's some things that I don't really like about the health industry. I think there's a lot that can be kind of shaming. And so that's what I want to talk about today, is how can we love ourselves into the body that we love, instead of hating ourselves into the body that we'll love. So let's see, I'm going to start here. So the name of this was the 8 keys to radically transform your health and body forever. So I will have 8 steps that I'm going to be going over here, and each one of these steps are representing one of the weeks in the program. And this is a program that I've been implementing at the some addiction recovery facilities, and I'm really excited to be offering this to the general population, because I think that it's going to be a game changer for a lot of people. So the number one thing is, or the first thing I guess that I want to start with, is becoming aware of your stressors. So what it's going to take to kind of understand the way that I work is this little diagram that I'm going to go through. So up in your head, you have this, you have a brain, and your brain communicates with your body. And that communication takes a lot of different forms. You communicate with blood, and in your blood, you've got hormones and neurotransmitters. That's one way that our brain communicates with our body. We also have nerves. We have electrical impulses. Like if I step on a tack and I feel that pain, that is an electrical impulse that my brain is kind of telling my body to move away from that tack. And if you're into Western or Eastern medicine, I should say, another way that the brain communicates with the body would be qi. You could think of that as kind of an energy. And the purpose of this communication is for function. You want your body to be communicating with your brain very well, and vice versa, so that you've got a good normal function. And in a perfect world, you could call this 100% function. And I'm going to get back to both of those two terms here in a little bit. And when you're functioning at 100% and your brain and your body are communicating really well and everything is normal, then you could say that you're in a state of ease. So if you're in a state of ease, and looking at this diagram, would you say that this person is healthy? Yes, I would say that this person is healthy. The medical term for this would be homeostasis. So is this the kind of person who would show up at a doctor's office, or whenever we are going down the supplement aisle and we're looking for things off of the shelf to make us feel better? No, we typically at that point we have symptoms. And if we have symptoms, can we still be in a state of ease? And I don't know if this is where the word disease came from, but it fits really nicely into my lecture, so I'm going to go with it. There's probably some kind of underlying diseased process. And along with that, there's an underlying malfunction. So if your brain and your body aren't communicating very well and you're in some kind of malfunctioned state and you're in a diseased process, you are no longer functioning at 100%, and you are no longer at this normal function. And I want to kind of point out that a lot of times when we have certain symptoms, and a lot of times I've asked my clients this, I'll ask them about headache and fatigue and different things like that. And a lot of times people will say, well, I mean, no more than normal. I don't have headaches any more than normal. And so I want to kind of put it out there that, living in perpetual fatigue or having a headache all the time or whatever it insert symptom here is not necessarily normal. We often confuse that term with the word common. So I just wanted to make sure that I pointed that out. So when we're in the doctor's office or we're going up and down the supplement aisles, what we're doing is we're looking for some kind of relief. We're looking to get rid of those symptoms. So that could be in the form of cream, or for my skin, if I have a rash, and that cream will make my rash go away. Or if I'm having trouble sleeping, that could be a pill like Ambien. Or even if you're going to a holistic practitioner, this could be some melatonin or some chamomile tea. But regardless, we're only getting rid of the symptom. We still have that underlying diseased process, and we still have that underlying malfunction. So what we have to do is dig a little bit deeper. And that's where I want to go back to that communication between our brain and our body. Whether that's something in our blood, something in our nerves, or even something with our qi, there's something that is kind of out of balance a little bit. And what is the thing that causes that imbalance? It's stress. It's always stress. And there's a lot of different forms of that stress. The one that most people think about first is mental emotional stress. So this would be, like finances, or this could be, work deadlines, or having some relationship stress. And that's a big deal, and it's very real. And it has some of the same physiological responses as even a physical stress. And a physical stress, if you think of, if I roll my ankle and that ankle poofs up and it gets swollen, that is a physical stress. There's a lot of things that are happening that I can see. There's redness, it hurts, it's very uncomfortable. And another form of stress is chemical stress. So this could be something like food. Whenever I am eating food and I'm putting it into my body and I chew it up, I'm distributing whatever that food stuff was throughout the rest of my body, and it's a chemical reaction. So take an apple, for example. If I bite into an apple and I chew it up, I'm breaking it down into tiny little carbohydrates, which I'm going to be using for fuel. So that process right there, that is a chemical process. The same thing with an aspirin. If I take an aspirin because I have a headache, that aspirin isn't going straight to my head, it's going into my blood. And my brain and my body is distributing that via my blood throughout my entire body, and I just happen to feel it in where my headache was, my headache going away. So I wanted to kind of point this out because I think that becoming aware of those symptoms and not simply sweeping them under the rug is a really big gift. There's something that is trying to get your attention. Those symptoms are kind of like a red flag that are waving in the air, trying to get you to look a little bit deeper into that brain-body connection. And that can take a lot of different forms. So that's the biggest thing there, is becoming aware. That's probably one of the very first most important steps that I could ask of for anybody. So that's number one. Number two, slow down for digestion. This is a biggie, and I like that word digestion because I think it can be applied to a lot of different processes, I guess. So let's start with the medical side of things. So you have a hormone in your body, we all do, called pregnenolone. And you only make so much pregnenolone a day. And pregnenolone is a really important hormone because it's distributed between two really important processes. One of those processes is fight, flight, or freeze. This is when a bear comes into the room and you either need to fight that bear, run away from the bear, or you're so scared that you just freeze on the spot. The second really important physiological process is rest and digest. So this is the opposite of fight, flight, or freeze. This is, you're chewing up your food and you're assimilating it appropriately, and you're repairing the things that have been broken down, and you're in a relaxed state. So this is a really simplified explanation of what's going on the physiological level, but it's pretty important. So in the class, I would get a little bit deeper into this, but for right now, this is going to serve the purposes that we're shooting for. So fight, flight, or freeze. If you think about someone pulling in front of you while you're driving on the highway, and they cut you off and you're going really fast, a lot of things are going to happen all at the same time. Your pupils are going to dilate, your heart rate is going to increase, your breathing rate is going to increase, your adrenal glands are going to release cortisol, which is super important because along with that comes adrenaline. Your blood pressure is going to increase, your blood sugar is going to increase, and all of those things happen so that you can tighten up all of your muscles and slam on the brakes. So in that situation, that fight, flight, or freeze reflex, that chemistry that happens, saved your life. And that's what it's there for. It's a survival mode. Rest and digest, on the other hand, is very opposite. Like if you think about food, what we first do is we choose the food that we want to eat. So it kind of starts in the brain as well. You put it in your mouth and you start to chew it up and you release saliva. And that saliva is super important for the digestive process itself. The next part is when you swallow it, it goes into your stomach. And in your stomach, you're going to release some hydrochloric acid. That's going to be good for breaking down the protein. It goes even deeper into your intestines, and right before it gets there, it's contacted with some bile, and that helps to break down the fat. So now this burger, say, has broken down all the way to, you've chewed it up into smaller pieces of burger. It's gone into your stomach where you've broken it down into protein molecules. Then you've gone into your intestines and broken down into fat molecules, into lipids. And now it's in your small and your large intestines where you've got enzymes and bacteria that break it down even smaller so that it's in the form of amino acids. And here is when it can be absorbed and it can be assimilated into your bloodstream, and you can use it to make things like your skin and your hair and your nails and your eyeballs and everything out of. It's an incredibly important process. Both of these processes are incredibly important. However, they cannot happen at the same time, and that's a really important thing to realize. You can't be in fight or flight and rest and digest at the same time. So why does that matter? If you are eating a meal, say you're sitting down and you have a plate in front of you and you're already beating yourself up over the fact that some of these things on your plate aren't healthy enough, or maybe you're about to binge eat, or you're calling yourself a fat ass. All of these things are putting you into that fight, flight, or freeze response. Even though it's not as obvious as running from a bear or slamming on the brakes, you're still in that fight or flight chemistry, and you're not set up for optimal digestion. So at that point, it doesn't even matter what's on your plate, because you're not going to digest it as well. You're not going to assimilate that food as well. And when we're kind of chronically in that fight, flight, or freeze, if you think about it, this could be, so we've got the traffic that we already talked about, going to work maybe, and then you get to work and one of your coworkers is giving you a hard time, and then possibly you've got a lot of deadlines, and maybe you're going from meeting to meeting to meeting, and you don't have time to slow down and even grab something to eat. Then maybe you're rushing home because you have to pick up the kids from something, and then possibly you get in a fight with your spouse. And then meanwhile, you're walking past the mirror and you just don't feel like you look like the way that you should, or that you don't feel healthy, or maybe you're sick even at this time. All of those things are subtle in comparison to a bear, but they're chronic. So if you have that pregnenolone hormone and you only make so much of it a day, and all of it is being shunted towards this fight or flight chemistry, you're going to create some imbalances here. This is going to show up as hormonal imbalances. This could be things like having a low libido. This could be poor wound healing. This could be chronic fatigue. All of those things. So really, now when you're thinking about, step one, the awareness of your symptoms, those things are really, really important. Maybe whenever I am fatigued, what my body is trying to tell me is not necessarily that I need a cup of coffee. Maybe I need to rest. Maybe my body is trying to force me into that rest and digest kind of state. So, and I want to kind of talk about this in a way that's real and specific to me. So I mentioned that I've been in the health field now for over 9 years. And so the way that I practice has really evolved over time. I've gone from that eat less, work out more mentality to a little bit of behavior change, to figuring out what's going on the physiological level, to the fitness side of things, and then trying to connect them all together. But at one point, whenever I first got into this field, I remember distinctly going home for a Thanksgiving, and I had been learning all about this nutrition and what was good and not good for my body, and I knew exactly how many calories I needed to have, and I knew that fried foods were bad for you, and I knew that I didn't need to have gluten and dairy and all of this. So I went home, and I'm from Arkansas, and so all of our food at Thanksgiving is and always has been fried or breaded or whatever you can imagine a Southern meal being. And I remember one Thanksgiving in particular where I told my aunt I wasn't going to eat the fried turkey, and people asked me why I wasn't having the cornbread or the dressing or all of that. And I made sure to tell them all why I wasn't having it, that fried foods are bad for you and gluten and dairy are causing inflammation. And I ended up only having some, vegetables and some things. And in that moment, if you think about this screen that you're looking at, was it more stressful for my body to eat the fried turkey and enjoy the time with my family? Or was it more stressful on my physiology to go on a diatribe and pick apart the whole holiday that my aunt had been planning for weeks for, get on my soapbox and tell everybody, that these are bad foods, and then to socially isolate myself from a holiday that I love? No, like that, me abstaining from that fried turkey in that situation was incredibly more stressful on my physiology than just being with my family and just celebrating the holiday. So I think sometimes this idea of nutritional perfectionism is 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 more damaging than the actual foods themselves. And I think that that's an important thing to talk about and to recognize. And it's not something that we do all that easily, which is why I wanted to make this program. Um, there's tons of stressors. There's so many things that are outside of our control. But there are so many things that are self-induced. And there's a saying, pain is inevitable, but suffering is a choice. And it was my choice to tell my family, how bad these foods were. And it was my choice to isolate myself on this holiday when, if I had just relaxed and just slowed down and just been there and had the fried turkey, that would have been almost that would have been a celebration. That would have been healing, if you will. And when we're in a hurry in between meals, we're putting ourselves in that fight or flight. When we're low on the priority list, when we're, telling ourselves that I should eat this or I shouldn't eat that, it's just putting ourselves into a state where we cannot optimally digest the food that's in front of us, regardless of what it is. So that's why my tip number 2 is just to slow down, to physically get yourself in that restful state. When you're eating, have it be a celebration. Have it be a time where you're devouring the atmosphere, the people around you, the conversation, maybe the music, all of that. That's a part of your nourishment as well. It's an important piece for digestion as a whole. And if you wanted to push that a little bit further, if you think about physical digestion is incredibly important, so is mental digestion. And if I'm about to get in an argument with my partner that I've been in a million different times, there's a lot of power in slowing down and just taking a little bit of ownership over what I'm about to do or not to do. So just to recap, slow down and become aware of your stressors. So that brings us to number 3. This one says, find purpose to find balance. And I've got on the screen a picture of a plumb line. And if you're familiar with what a plumb line is, it's something that they used to use a long time ago. I think they literally put a plum on a string. I'm not really sure if that's how they did it, but I like to think that that's what it really was. But regardless, something heavy on the bottom of a string, and gravity will never lie. Gravity will tell you what is true vertical, what is perpendicular to the horizon. So they would use this for things like putting in fence posts and seeing if they're straight up. So I like that concept of a plumb line because I think that it is important to even our health goals. And a lot of times we know that we should have a goal. And I think goals are important, but I think that they are a little short-sighted. And when it comes to kind of why you're doing this, why you're trying to lose weight, or why you're trying to improve your health, you got to have that reason why. And sometimes when I think of purpose, I think that that's kind of like a big word, and it's a hard one to narrow down about what that really means. So I think of the word identity. And a word that I have thought about since I was a little girl that has always stood out to me is the word bright spot. And this is just for me personally. I want to be a bright spot. When I am in a conversation with somebody, I want to show up as a bright spot. When I am, giving a lecture, I want to be a bright spot. When I'm working with a client, I want to be a bright spot, and I want to brighten up a room. All of those things are things that really resonate with who I am. But with somebody else, that could be different. For you, that could be, I am the rock. I am the person that people lean on. Like I am steadfast. I am steady. I have a solid foundation. For another client, I have heard, I am the go-to person. I'm the person that people go to when they need to get things done because I get things done. And so there's some things that go along with those identities. And you can measure if you're a little bit too yin, and yin, for those who aren't familiar, is a little bit more inward energy, or if you're a little bit too yang, and that's a little bit too outward energy. So this is allowing you to kind of find your balance. But without having that plumb line, you're not going to know if you're too far to the left or if you're too far to the right. And so if I'm a bright spot, I need to feed myself in a way that I have energy. I have to, take a look at how I show up in conversations, and same thing with someone who is the person who needs to get things done. Like they need to, look at maybe their activities. Like, are they too worn out that they're not able to show up for somebody fully? So kind of finding what that identity is for you, and then using that as something that you can measure if you're too far to the left and too far to the right. Let's see. So let's go to number 4. So first we are taking awareness of our stressors. Then we are slowing down so that we can digest what's happening. Then we are finding our plumb line. And then when you know what your plumb line is, now it's time to maybe detox some of the things that are not lined up with that plumb line. And detox is a pretty trendy word, and it can take a lot of different forms. For some people, it could be as simple as drinking water. This is a biggie, and if you've ever wanted to experience or experiment with detox, just drink water. I usually recommend half your body weight in ounces of water per day, and at the minimum. So that's a good way to do a gentle detox. JERF. This is one of my favorite acronyms, and I can't take credit for it, but it stands for Just Eat Real Food. That's another great detox. I think sometimes when it comes to that nutritional kind of perfectionism, or those nutritional wisdoms that I was talking about earlier, we have all these different types of diets out there. There's vegan, and there's paleo, and there's maybe a doctor who says you should have no fat, and maybe there is an Eskimo who recommends having high fat, and maybe there's a celiac in the room who can't have any gluten at all. And if you look at all of those people, the vegan, the paleo, the Eskimo, the doctor, the celiac, they all are right. They all have a ton of research to back them up. So I mention this because I think sometimes we will run ourselves in circles trying to figure out what the best diet is for us, when really, if you just start with just eating real food, you're probably going to detox a lot of the negative stuff out of your life, regardless of which diet it is that you choose. And if you wanted to take that one step further, you can eliminate food sensitivities. Food sensitivities are something that cause inflammation, and this takes, a significant amount of work or some lab testing to do so. Sweat, that's another way to detox. Just physically get yourself moving. Decreasing environmental chemicals. This could be things that are around your house or the stuff that you put on your skin. With supplements, you could support your organs of detoxification. people are a biggie. Sometimes we have people in our life that are kind of like energy vampires. If you have you ever felt like you're having a 10 day and maybe you sit next to someone or you talk to someone who is having a 3 day, and then you end up leaving this conversation feeling like a 6? Those are kind of some of the people that are toxic to your life, and situations can be the same thing. So figuring out who those people and what those situations are, and seeing if there's any way that you can kind of detox them from you. And the big one that I want to talk about on this slide is toxic beliefs. And I think I've kind of already mentioned this belief of perfectionism, or this belief of nutritional wisdom, that if I can do enough research or if I can read enough studies, then I'll know enough to feed my body correctly. But another one I think that is a little bit more subtle is this belief of I know this already, or I've heard that before. And that's something that we can kind of let get in our way. And something as simple as like drinking water. Okay, Casey, I've heard that before. I want you to be willing and be open-minded. And really, if what you were doing was going to work for you, it would have worked already. So it might be time to change it up a little bit. What got you here won't get you there. I heard a woman open a seminar before, and she said, and I thought it was profound, and I don't know what the rest of the things that she said were, but she started out with, for anything I say that resonates with you, let it fall to the soil like a seed. And anything I say that doesn't resonate with you, let it fall to the soil like fertilizer. And I think that is profound. There are going to be people and situations and food and concepts that work for you, and there's going to be those same things that don't work for you. And I think it's very easy to get very fixated on the things that aren't working for you. And we put them in our path and we really harp on them. We pick it apart and we find every flaw. But that is just as toxic to your life. That's just as stressful to your physiology as rolling your ankle, as the chemicals in the environment. So I encourage you to, any of these things that I'm saying or that anybody else is saying, if they resonate with you, that's great. Cultivate them, let them grow, protect them, and use them. And if they don't resonate with you, just let them go. There's no benefit to you, and there's no need to spend more time on it. So just let it go. So that brings me to number 5. Gather quality building material. I like this. So if you have that plumb line still in your head, if you have that identity and you've been starting to remove the things that are not aligned with that plumb line, you got to start adding things back in. So when you think about that plumb line, I want you to think about what's missing, from that person that I identify with, from that thing that I think that I am, what's missing. And I saw this on Instagram, so I had to put it on here because I really like it. And I love that it's written in like crayon or marker or whatever this is. But it says, make a list of things that make you happy. Make a list of things you do every day. Compare the lists. Adjust accordingly. And that's so simple. But it's incredibly important. What can you add back in? If we're on the topic of food, this could be, maybe there's some superfoods that you've been wanting to experiment. Instead of focusing on these things instead of depriving yourself, just start adding in some good stuff. Just by definition, you'll be crowding out the things that aren't so good. Add in good people. Add in good situations for yourself. Add in the activities that you want to do. Add in those superfoods, and you're going to start to kind of crowd out those things that don't line up with your plumb line. So you're going to be more and more aligned with that underlying identity, and that's significant. And I like that. I kind of wrote quality there for a reason. Like if you think about food again, and if I'm sitting down and I have a meal in front of me, I'm making my eyeballs out of this junk. What is it that I want these eyeballs to be made out of? What kind of quality do I actually care about? And it's worth spending a little bit of time thinking about what those things are. What do you truly want to be made out of? What do you want to be surrounded by? And it's significant. So that leads me to number 6. Get your mind right. This is a biggie. Our beliefs are significant, and that it can be scientifically proven through the placebo effect. If you want the best drug in the world, the best blood pressure medication, the best antidepressant, the best any kind of pill that you can think of, the placebo outperforms the medical version almost every time. It's quite phenomenal, the things that we can believe ourselves into feeling. And there's some studies that I like to talk about, and one of them is the study of pinky strength. And I know that sounds really silly, but you can isolate your pinky strength, and it's not something that people typically work on, so it's an easy thing for a study. And let's see, if they had 3 groups of people. They had one group of people who, and actually everybody, they took a baseline of what their pinky strength was so that they had something to compare to. And the group that did these pinky exercises, they taught them for a couple of weeks specific exercises that they wanted them to do with their pinkies. And then the second group, they did no exercise at all. They didn't do anything. And then the third group, they didn't do any exercise, but they did listen to a recording that walked them through the exercise. So it was almost like they were meditating on these pinky exercises. The group that increased their pinky strength, the group that did the physical pinky exercises increased their pinky strength by 40%, which makes sense. The people who did not do any of the exercises or any of the meditations did not improve their pinky strength at all. And the people who did the pinky exercises, but only through meditation, they didn't physically take their pinkies through the work, they just were kind of verbalized through it, they increased their pinky strength by 30%. 30%! Just by thinking about it. And that's something that they just made their pinkies stronger because they had run through this before. You can see the same kind of studies in things like hair cream. They had a group of people, and I don't know the actual numbers on this one, so I'm going to butcher the actual study a little bit, but they had one group that had 100% of this medication in the cream. They had another group that had 50% of the medication in the cream, and then they had a third group that had 0% of the medication in the cream. And they all rubbed the cream on their head for a couple of weeks. And these are people who had been bald their entire life. The people who had the 100% cream, and I'm going to make up these numbers because I don't remember exactly what they were, they regrew their hair by 4 inches. That's great. They had the medicine, they did the work, they regrew their hair a little bit, and they had been bald forever, so it worked. The people who had 50% of the cream, or 50% of the medicine in the cream, they rubbed it on their head and they regrew their hair by 3 inches. That's still pretty darn good. They had a little bit of medicine in there and they regrew 3 inches kind of out of nowhere, so that's awesome. And then there was the third group that had the cream that had 0 medication in it. This group regrew their hair by 2 inches. They regrew their hair. They had no medicine. They just believed that they had this medicine, that they had this cure, and they regrew their hair. So just by your belief, you can make your hair grow. If you imagine, if you start to harness this placebo effect, you start to harness this belief, that's significant. We've already talked about kind of eliminating those toxic beliefs, so that leaves the door open. to replace them with your dream life. And I know that sounds really silly, but you're creating your life either way. So you might as well like put some work into it. If you're afraid of going out into public and you don't want to do it, and so you don't leave the house, that is the life that you created. You created days at home. If you want to try like going and meeting new people or going on a blind date, I mean, you've got to believe that you can do that. You've got to get out. You're going to create that life that life as well. So when it comes to your beliefs, I want you to get specific. Earlier when we were talking about the plumb line, that's more of kind of a general identity. But this can be as fun as, thinking about what your perfect day is, and start daydreaming about it. Start being that kind of person that you want to be. And there's going to be a ton of changes that just happen with just that. If you feel like you're a piece of shit, there's a good chance that you're going to be grabbing for food that is just a piece of shit. There's a good chance that you're not going to be treating yourself very well. So it's significant to kind of harness your belief and to at least take awareness of your beliefs. So we've talked about slowing down so that we can digest. And you can take digest for whatever you would like to, whatever you'd like for that to mean. We've talked about gaining awareness, and that's a huge one. Our stressors are things that teach us. We've talked about balance, kind of. We've talked about finding that purpose and seeing where we're in and out of balance. Where have we slowed down too much? Where are we stressed too much? And where can we kind of find that middle ground? And then up against that purpose, up against that plumb line, what are some toxic things that we need to get rid of? What are some beliefs that we need to get rid of? And then up against that plumb line, what are some, activities or food or people or situations that we can build into our life and start to construct this thing that is in alignment with our plumb line? And then belief. Start really building on it. Start really getting creative. Replace those toxic beliefs with positive ones. Things that, like, I may not love this situation, but I love myself. I ate too much at that last meal, but you know what? And I don't feel great right now, and I'm aware of that, but I still love me, and I'm going to try again. All of those things are huge, and I know we've kind of flown through these first 6 things, but I want to just go back and point them out. If you want to dive deeper into all of these things, this is a condensed version of an 8-week program where each one of these things I spend a whole class on. I spend a whole hour on. You have homework assignments on there. We have pen to paper. We have action planning going on for each one of these things. You have a week to talk about what's happening each time, and you have a week and a group of people to kind of reflect on what worked and what didn't work and what you need to change from here. And I live in Denver, Colorado. I know we've got some people on the call from outside of Colorado, and that's fine. But if you are within Denver, Colorado, or if you're in driving distance, this is something that's starting on September 30th. I'll tell you more about it later, but there's the website right there, the www.iamwellcoaching.com/8 weeks, where essentially I want you to be able to be your own health detective. That's kind of the name that I've earned, but I don't think that there's any reason why everybody on the call can't have the power to kind of be their own doctor, to figure out what is their own underlying root cause. And so this is a program to kind of set you up on how to do that for yourself. So I got a couple more that I want to go through before I let y'all go. Let's see, we're doing good on time. Okay, so number 7, own the power of your choice. And I love this photo because that's Luna off of Harry Potter. And I put that picture on here because your choice is magic. It's a magical power that you have. And once you've kind of slowed down and you've figured out what your plumb line is, and you know that you're in and you're out of balance, now you have a decision to make. Now you have a choice. if you realize that you're on track, you're probably just going to continue on the same alignment that you're on. But if you notice that you're out of alignment, that you're a little bit too far left or you're a little bit too far right, maybe you're a little bit too yin or maybe you're a little bit too yang, now you have a choice to make. And I think that is an incredibly important thing to think about. We have, no matter what the situation is, you always have, and you are limited to 3 choices. Choice number 1 is the optimal choice. This is the choice that is good for you and the well-being of everyone else around you and possibly the environment too. So it's the optimal choice in every way. And then there is the suboptimal choice. This is something that falls short in one of those areas. And the third choice is no choice. So you either have the optimal, the suboptimal, or no choice. And even the suboptimal choice is better than no choice. Because when you make the suboptimal choice, you learn. And that's okay. And there's nothing wrong with making mistakes and learning from your mistakes. It allows you to have a database, a Rolodex that you can thumb through whenever you're making your future choices. And that idea of no choice. So on my first slide, we talked about symptoms and how they can be wake-up calls. And if I'm having these symptoms and I'm just sweeping them under the rug, or I'm having these issues with a particular person and I'm sweeping them under the rug, that is no choice. That is me deafening my innate wisdom in order to just, in the name of being polite or in the name of, continuing to keep pushing myself. So I kind of want to just harp on that thing. When it comes to choice, I want you to be intentional. When it comes to making a plate, even making that conscious choice to eat, like I said, you're making your eyeballs out of this stuff. So even asking you're asking yourself, am I hungry? If you sit down and you think about that, am I hungry? It's kind of a profound question. Very often we eat when we're not hungry and we don't even think about it. And it's not even a choice, it's just a reaction. Will this food satisfy my hunger? That's another one that I think is pretty telling, because sometimes that hunger might be for something that is not food related. If I am pissed off at work and I want someone to hug me, or I want someone to tell me I'm doing a good job, but instead I reach into my drawer and I grab my chocolate and I eat it as fast as I can, I'm not making a choice right there. That is more of, I'm a slave to this pattern that I've created, and I've handed over my personal power to this person who has irritated me. Or if I have, a rash all over my body, or if I'm sick, or if I'm fatigued and I grab a cup of coffee, or if I am sick and I go to the doctor. And not that I think that there's a time and a place where those things are appropriate, but whenever we're doing that over and over and over again, we're really deafening our innate intelligence, and we're sacrificing the power of our choice, and we're handing over that authority to somebody else. So no choice is really bad, because you can always learn. So yeah, I encourage you to ask yourself what you really want to eat, if you're hungry, and if this stuff will satisfy your hunger, because it is a big deal. It is what you're making your body out of, your brain out of. And so this is the last one, practice, number 8. And I think this is a biggie. This is the hallmark of true change, and applying what you've learned on a consistent basis. I think that it's significant. There really is no shortcut into transformation. You kind of have to show up over and over and over again, regardless of what that is. I played basketball in college, and so I resonate with this word practice a lot. It was our goal to go to the national championship, but you don't just get to go. You have to kind of earn your way there. And so our coaches put together a system of practices where every day we would come in and we would show up and we would practice. And it was, some days I could make every shot, And some days I couldn't make a thing. But I kept showing up. And the thing is, like, on those days where I couldn't make anything, that doesn't mean that I'm a good or a bad person. It doesn't mean that I'm a screw up. It doesn't mean that I'm broken. It just means that I need to keep practicing. This is something that I am in the process of mastering. And I kind of think that, there's a saying that's called the way out is through. The way out is through. And I think that's really important. The solution is the process. Sometimes we look for these quick fixes, whether it's an expert or some guru. I don't want to be anybody's guru. I want you to have this power and this information yourself. That way you can kind of lead yourself through this detective work, if you will. And in order to do that, you kind of have to forgive yourself along the way, because you're going to screw up. You're going to make the suboptimal decision. And it's not always easy to apply that forgiveness to ourselves. If you think about a child, sometimes it's a little bit easier. If a child is trying to learn how to walk and it falls over, is it going to be beneficial for me to yell at that baby? Screw you, baby. This baby doesn't work. It's broken. I want a new one. This baby can't walk yet. This baby's not going to amount to anything. Like, this baby can't even walk. Are you kidding me? You should have this figured out by now, baby. That would be crazy. That would be just bonkers. You would never do that, because it's just not. It's silly. But we do that to ourselves. We tell ourselves that. Like, maybe we've tried to restrict our food for a really long time, and then we just cave and we go on a binge. I used to do this. And you start to hate yourself even while you're doing it. You start eating faster and faster, and you're telling yourself, like you're so stupid, like this is awful. You even, when you're in that kind of situation, you're not even doing it around anybody. You're ashamed. You're hiding. And you feel bad about it afterwards. And you're beating yourself up. You're ripping yourself a new one. And we do this even outside of food. We do this in work. If you are trying to get people to like you, and you say the wrong thing, and then you start beating yourself up about it, it's kind of that same thing. You're hurling yourself into this stress response, which is just further screwing up your physiology. So these things are really, really intertwined. And when it comes to this whole process of transformation, of getting healthier, or losing weight, or feeling better, or achieving your goals, you got to show up every day. You got to be generous with yourself, and you got to forgive along the way, because you're going to screw up. And the cool thing about food is that you get to try again in like 4 hours. So if you screw up once, if you get some signals that are like, oh man, I've got some symptoms right now that I'm going to slow down and be aware of, and I feel bloated, or I feel sick to my stomach, that is really good information. I know now that what I ate during that time, I didn't feel great. And I can apply that to my future meal and take that into account. And I can, realize that was the suboptimal choice, and kind of tinker with it. Because that's what this process is. It's just exploration. It's just an experiment. We're just trying. As if you were learning a new language. You're not going to learn how to speak Chinese tomorrow. You got to practice. You got to, have someone help you sometimes. You've got to be led through the process. And it's going to take a long time before you're fluent at it. And so I just encourage you to kind of reflect on the symptoms, and find out what's working for you, and find out what's not working for you, and to slow down, and to just be with yourself along this process. Because it is your life. And if I was to think of why would I do a webinar like this? Why would I try to connect this kind of woo-woo stuff to something that's a little bit harder, or something that's research-based, when a lot of times these two models don't really get along? The medical model and the holistic community don't really communicate all that well. But the thing is, everyone's just trying to help people, and we're just trying to get better. And I think it's really important to bridge that gap, because our relationship with food, it can mirror our relationship with life. For example, like if I am hurrying through life, that could be reflected in hurrying through meals. If I have fear of emotional emptiness, I might feel that with overeating. If I need certainty and I need control, that might be mirrored in a very strict dietary rule or restrictions that I place on myself. And if I'm looking for love in all the wrong places, that could be symbolized in our use of food as a substitute for love. So how we eat truly does reflect the way that we live. And so, why would we work to change the habits and the attitudes that we have around eating? And it's because I think we can transform ourselves at a deeper level. If I focus on the way that I eat, I might be able to focus my attention more in any kind of situation. If I loosen my dietary restrictions up a little bit, I might learn how to open up to life a little bit more. If I accept my body the way that it is, I might learn how to love myself and other people the way I am and the way that they are. And I think by eating with dignity, we live with dignity. So as simple as, changing the way that you eat can change the way that you live. And I think that it's important. And that's why I made the 8-week program, because I want to have a conversation around this. I want this to be, I don't want people to suffer in silence. I've worked with many people who have tried everything, and they beat themselves up and they don't work. And the health industry really does exploit this. I have worked with, if you've heard of this show, Extreme Weight Loss, I used to work in a facility that worked with these participants. And I even had a hand in creating a program that was essentially like Extreme Weight Loss, the television show, but it was Extreme Weight Loss, the ride, where people would fly across the country and they would spend $4,000 on this program that was 1 week long. And I helped develop that program, and I don't feel really great about it. But I don't think that that's realistic in a lot of different ways. I don't think that those people learned how to take care of themselves when we worked with them. And I think that $4,000 was completely unattainable. And it was not something they can sustain in the real life. And so I wanted to create a program that will kind of teach people to take charge of their own health, to try to work on, their own symptoms, and to kind of figure out where the medical model fits for them and where the holistic model fits for them. And I wanted it to be affordable. Like, I don't want this $4,000 1 week long incomplete program. I want you to have a lot of touches. I want you to have a community around you, and I want it to be at a price that makes sense. So I typically offer this 8-week program for $397, but right now the program hasn't even started yet, so it's at an early bird price, so it's at $297, and which I think is incredibly reasonable. And it's every Wednesday night starting at 6 p.m., and it's going to start on September 30th. And again, that's here in Denver, Colorado. And if you go to this www.iamwellcoaching.com/8weeks, you're going to be able to find out some more information there. Let's see. Let me see. Essentially, the name of that program, as you can see at the top, whenever you get to that page, is Transform Your Body from the Inside Out, an 8-week no diet diet. Because I don't think that you need another diet, because we've all been told what we're supposed to be doing with our bodies. And a lot of times we even know what to do, but we just don't know how to do it. And so I designed this program to kind of bridge the gap between the hard science and how the body works, and how physiological factors can directly influence our behavior, and vice versa, how our behavior directly influences our physiological factors. The curriculum, it's obviously an 8-week program, and it goes a lot more in depth into what we talked about today. But I'm trying to break down some complicated processes and put them into simple and easy to understand concepts, and attach those more medically based concepts to softer ones like purpose and self-love and behavior change. And I want you to leave being empowered and having the education, and I want to challenge you, and I'll do that through homework and through discussion and through exercises. And all of these things are centered around building a better relationship with your food and your body. And I'm pretty excited about it, to be quite honest. And I can write out the link here in the question section. That way you can click on it, or obviously you can just go straight to the website. Not the last thing, I guess, but I wanted to also offer free. I told you what I do in my private practice is I interpret lab work for people. So you see there at the very bottom there, a free gift for anybody who's on this seminar is if you have a blood chemistry, I will give you a free interpretation of that blood chemistry to kind of spend some time with you that you might not have had time spent with you with a doctor. So and kind of reading a little bit more into the numbers than just in reference range and out of reference range. So I want you to feel heard, and I want you to understand what they mean, and I want you to be able to ask as many questions as you have. So if you would like one of those, you can send me an email, or you know what? Also, you can type in your email address right now in the questions section. So go ahead if you have any desire for this free blood chemistry interpretation. You can type in your email address right now. If you would like to be a part of the 8-week program, then go to that website and sign up on the sales page. And then the last thing I want to do is to read you a quote that I think is awesome. And I think you can see me again. I hope you can. And thank you for bearing with me for the technological difficulties at the beginning. This is not my quote. I wish it was, because it's really good. This was written by Mark David. He runs an Institute of the Psychology of Eating, which is phenomenal here in Boulder. And he said, the quote is, "I recognize that at its deepest level, eating is an affirmation of life. Each time I eat, I agree somewhere inside to continue life on earth. I acknowledge that this choice to eat is a fundamental act of love and nourishment, a true celebration of my existence. As a human being on earth, I agree to be an eater. I choose life again and again and again." And that's the quote. And I think that is a really powerful statement. And the whole purpose of this seminar is that you can't hate yourself into the body that you love. So I hope there were some points that were helpful for you, and that you can take away. If you have any questions, you can type them in the bottom here. And I'm going to go ahead and type in, if I can. Well, maybe not. I guess I can't. I can't type a question to you, but you can type a question to me, and that's all I have today. So thank you for coming. Check out the website. Send me an email if you have any questions. And this was fun. Bye.